All right, and now we are back. Slowly we are getting there. The screen is visible to everyone now. And as you can see, today we are going to talk about the Dutch solar market, and more specifically, we will be diving into the current status of the market, future developments, grid challenges and solutions, the progress of the regional energy strategies, developments in the SDE++ subsidy scheme, and much more that Amelie will be sharing with us today. So that's great. And we are organizing this webinar, well, both in anticipation of the Solar Future NL annual conference, the 13th edition, already coming up in July. And when we distribute these slides later, you can find more information via the link on the event. And also as part of our general annual Solarplaza The Netherlands campaign, where we publish content throughout the year. Every month we have many content pieces coming out, white papers, articles, webinars, and much more. So make sure to subscribe for updates via the link to stay in the loop on everything about the Dutch market. A little bit of background still about Solarplaza itself. Our mission is to positively impact the world by accelerating the sustainable energy transition. And we've been doing that since 15 years already. And yeah, basically through our physical conferences, our virtual events, but also all the resources we publish and our newsletters as well. And over the course of 15 years, we've organized over 150 events already in more than 40 countries. And we hope to be able to organize many face-to-face conferences, physical conferences this year as well, when the situation improves. And until then, you can rely on us with more virtual sessions coming up. And we have also launched a new branch in the Solarplaza group, and this is the Solarplaza Consultancy. And the Solarplaza Consultancy works along solar stakeholders who support their internationalization ambitions. And they will do that through the market intelligence and also matchmaking and marketing. So if you find the content of this webinar interesting and valuable, and you would like to get more tailored and actionable intelligence on the Dutch or any other European solar market, because we will be covering all markets that we are active in, then please get in touch with the Solarplaza Consultancy through the website. And the last thing I would like to mention is that we are actually starting a solar project development course specifically focused on the Netherlands. And this course focuses on project development in the Netherlands, and it consists of several sessions, both virtual sessions, but also site visits on on site with several projects and companies, as well as a 2-day masterclass in September. And you can find more information on the website via the link that is mentioned on the screen. It's possible to register for either the entire course or separate sessions, so make sure to check that out. And the first session is already coming up in about 2 weeks, starting the 8th of April. And then finally, a couple of practical notes before we continue. In case of technical issues, make sure to let us know through the chat box. And if you have questions, you can type those in the separate question section in the menu on the right of your screen. And Amelie told me that she is willing to take questions also throughout the presentation. So whenever you have something on your mind, make sure to let us know, and we'll be able to cover that. And all the remaining questions we will try to discuss after the presentation in the official Q&A. And all the slides, as well as the recordings, will be made available after the webinar. So we will distribute those soon as well. And then I would like to continue and introduce Amelie, who is with us here today. And she's a policy director at Holland Solar, has been working on and influenced a lot of policy making for the solar energy sector already, with over 20 years of experience with renewable energy and sustainable building also. And she is now active for Holland Solar already for over 10 years, since 2010. So thanks a lot for joining us today, Amelie. And welcome.
Happy to do that.
And then also I would like to give you the floor right away. Let's see if I can give you the controls as well, so that you can proceed with your presentation. I think it should be working if you click the screen. And
well, we'll see in a minute, right? So
go ahead.
Okay.
We'll find out soon enough.
This for? Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. And now I see something else. I see your. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amelie Veenstra. For who is not. Oh, something's happening. Okay.
Oh, apologies.
For who doesn't know me, I'm the policy director of Holland Solar, which is the association for the Dutch solar industries. Well, you can imagine that in the Netherlands we have a very exciting time at this moment because the market is growing very rapidly, and I will tell you all about this. And I'd like to underline that if you have any questions, I really like to answer questions during the meeting. It would be very nice to have some interaction, but also in the end we have a Q&A. So please do not hesitate to put your questions in the chat box, and Kristiaan will just help me to voice your questions to me. Okay, let's check if it's working, Kristiaan. Oh, yes, it is. I'm a little bit too fast. Sorry for that. Okay, I start with this graph. This is a graph of the development of daily solar yield. So all the yellow dots are daily solar yields. And it shows so nicely how the solar contribution to our energy system is developing in these years. Also, it shows that we, in some months, we will definitely reach, like on one day, 20% of the average daily electricity demand. So this means that now in the Netherlands we have a substantial contribution to the energy demand. In total, in the Netherlands, we have 25 renewable electricity, and of which, well, 7% solar of the total electricity production. So it's moving rapidly. We are not yet there, of course, but it's moving rapidly. Sorry, I'm trying to control these. Can I have the next slide, please? Something is not going well. Sorry for that. So we see the last years, of course, is a rapid growth of market added yearly megawatt peak. And we now reached last year a market of like 3 megawatt peaks in total. More or less 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 residential, commercial, roof, and ground mounted. And of course, the new player in the block is, of course, the ground mounted solar parks. If we check, next slide, please. If we show you the market segment shares, it clearly shows that there is a huge shift, has been a huge shift towards more solar, ground-mounted solar projects, and the share of the residential segment has decreased relatively, of course, because in absolute terms it is still very strong. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and Amelie, I think if you click on the slides again, I think you should be able to get the control back. And if not, I can. No, it's not working. Then I will just click for you.
Yes, please. Okay. This graph shows the total installed capacity, and in total we now reach like 10 gigawatt peak. So when I started as a policy employer at Holland Solar, we had a celebration like we had like, I think, 100 megawatt peak. So clearly, I was very, very happy to reach this 10 gigawatt peak point in our country. Next slide, please. So, if we look forward, we expect a very continuous market for the time being, and we expect a growth to a market of 4 gigawatt peak in the year 2024. This is all based on a more or less proven pipeline. So this is actually, we can be sure that this will actually be the market the next years. Of course, unless we will not solve all kinds of grid solutions, but I will talk to you about this later. I think we will reach like 24 gigawatt peak in the year 2024. Next slide, please. So, of course, the whole future of our solar market will definitely depend on the new policies to the new policies which will be developed, of course, depending on the type of coalition we will form in the Netherlands. We had our elections in March the 17th, so this is very, it was only last week. So yeah, this we have to say that, you know, like the right parties, they won and left actually lost. And the key position is in the hands of the Liberal Green Party, D66, it is called. And there will be like a more or less complicated coalition forming, because we have like 17 parties now in the second chamber, and it will be very interesting weeks for us. And it will either be a liberal right plus a left and green parties, or a liberal right and extra right parties. And you can understand, of course, that this is could be very dominant in the coming policies. But on the other hand, we have the climate agreement, and they will definitely stick to the climate agreement. So this is actually sure. Crucial energy topics in the formation will be topics like percentage of CO2 reduction, which is now 49%, and of course the European Union wants everyone to stick to 55%. So this will be a major change actually in the Netherlands. So, and in relation to this, of course, the electrification and hydrogen agenda for the industries are very important agendas. Of course, decisions on grid investment and storage, flex capacity and incentives, energy tax systems, but of course also the SDE++ scope and budget, but also the post-SDE policies are very important decisions in the next months. One specific thing for solar will be that we expect that there will be some extra incentives on solar roofs, and there may be a threat on access to land for solar. So this is actually something we monitor very closely at this moment. Yes, Kristiaan? So I already said the climate agreement will be in force, and maybe we'll get a plus on this. And something I did not mention yet, but there will actually be a debate on, will there be extra nuclear capacity in the Netherlands after 2030? Yes. And this will, of course, influence the whole energy game if we have new nuclear in the Netherlands. Well, important to know is what are the types of support schemes in the Netherlands. I will talk you through this. For commercial building and utility scale, the most important support scheme is, of course, the SDE Plus. It changed this year and last year in SDE Plus, meaning that all kinds of CO2 reducing techniques, also CCS and e-boilers in the industry, they are also part of this support scheme. So solar has to compete not only with wind and biomass and all kinds of renewable energies, but also with CCS. It supports through via a feed-in tariff for 15 years, and in every round there's a round every year, and the next round will be open. This is in kind of tender form. I think you all know this, but the next round will be open in September or October. It's not yet sure of 2021, with a budget we expect again €5 billion. From 2025 on, the SDE will stop for solar. It is expected to be competitive at that moment. So this is a very strict agreement in the Netherlands. Now, well, there are two other things I would like to mention. There is an energy investment allowance for building owners, giving some deduction benefits on the investment costs. And also there's a tendering from governmental sites. I put a source. You can find the bid book online, and they will publish pilots every once in a while, and you can apply for actually sites to develop a project. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and Amelie, I already have two questions coming in the chat in the meantime. Yes. Yeah. So, and these were basically around the same topic about the charts that you showed earlier, because of course you had three categories mentioned, the commercial, yes, and the ground mounted and the residential. And there's also quite some interest in floating solar, and this was not split up as a separate category, of course.
No.
But is the growth in this segment, which is now quite a lot in the Netherlands, actually, is that accounted for already in the statistics and the projections that you made?
Yeah, we do not have projections and statistics on floating yet. But of course, we know that there are a lot of projects, and we can make, of course, the statistics, because there you can find it yourself, actually, if you want to know that on the website of the SDE++ subsidy. You can find on project base what is in the pipeline and what is already realized, and now you can find it if it's floating or not. But for now, I do not have these figures, but there is an increasing interest in floating.
And do you foresee any changes in the upcoming SDE rounds specifically for floating as well, or is there not necessarily allocated for those projects as a separate category?
Yes, floating has actually a separate category in the SDE++. So I don't know what type of changes. Of course, the SDE++ is the subsidy grant is changed every year. So I don't know what the question specifically is about this topic, but it follows, of course, the market costs, etc., and so on. Yes.
Exactly, because previously there was not a separate category, I believe, for floating solar, but we had the first SDE++ round, of course, recently, and I think this was the first time that you could submit floating projects, right? And it's expected that you can also do so in the next round.
Absolutely, because it has specific, of course, specific cost structure, and it has also a specific yield structure. So it has a higher yield, so that's why it has a specific category. Yeah.
All right, thanks. We'll go to the next slide then.
Okay. Well, as far as smaller users is concerned, for the residential and SME sector, of course, we have still the net metering for small consumers. This will be phased out actually in small steps towards 2031. And in 2031, the plan is that the net metering is off the table. It is actually not yet sure because it has not been confirmed yet, this proposal in the second chamber. And because of the elections, this will take a little bit more time. But the whole idea, of course, is that net metering in the end will be completely phased out. Also, of course, allowing stimulating self-consumption. Another important change is that we have a specific scheme for cooperatives, which are, of course, cooperatives of citizens, so to say. It is called a postal code scheme. So people have to live together, like in a sort of postal code graph. This is specifically for projects till 500 kilowatt peak hours, and it has a special feed-in tariff, an interesting, actually, feed-in tariff and budget. I'm very curious what this will do, because we had another type of support scheme based on tax reduction on these type of projects. And this is a new type of scheme, so since this year. So I'm very interested what will happen with this. Another new kid on the block on this year is that you have the option to have an extra investment subsidy if you are an SME or another type of organization paying, like churches, for instance, or gyms or whatever, all kinds of organizations with a lower electricity tax. And also nice to know is that there also are a lot of local subsidies and also loans possible for this type of small users, depending, of course, on what the provinces or what the municipalities want. I give you one example, the province of South Holland, where we are now. They offer a subsidy to enforce your roof. So to enable well, actually improve the business case of your solar project on your roof. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and Amelie, since you're speaking about the residential market now and the net metering phase out, there's also some questions coming in related to that, because of course yes, the fact that we still have the net metering in the Netherlands and also still for quite some time to come hasn't really helped, well, as of now, the development of storage batteries for the residential market. Do you envision or like, can we expect a certain subsidy in the future as well, a financial stimulus for batteries, or is it really too early to say anything about that already?
This is actually too early to tell. I know that there is a lot of lobby, of course, on this topic, and we, of course, help those lobbyists too. It really depends, actually, on. I think that this Green Liberal Party, D66, who is very fond of stimulating storage. So this will depend on the outcome of the
so they might have an influence there. And is there also room for that in the context of the National Climate Agreement? Is it still possible to make deviations and introduce such new plans?
Yes, there's a lot of interest, of course, in all kinds of demand-side management strategies. stimulating self-consumption and storage. But it's not yet clear if there will be actually an investment subsidy. And I cannot tell if the chance is high. I'm sorry, I cannot tell if the chance is high or low. It really depends on, well, this actually the end game, I think, on energy topics in the negotiations after these elections.
Yes. So time will tell. And I've one more question actually, even about this slide regarding to the postcode-regeling, the postal code scheme. Can you explain a bit more what the key differences are between the old and the new scheme that is introduced?
Yeah. So the old scheme was based on that you were allowed, as a cooperative, you were allowed to pay no tax on the kilowatt hour you your share in the kilowatt hours. So this was actually a very complicated deal with the tax authorities that you had to make about the right to deduct your tax from your bill. And of course, because the tax is differing every year, so they change the amount of tax you pay every year. So actually the cash flow was not sure, and this is why the risks were too high. And besides, it was administratively, the administration of these type of projects were too complicated. So they changed this after an evaluation. They changed this to a special feed-in tariff. So you still have to start a cooperative based on specific restriction regionally. So this has not changed between the old and the new system. So you have to live in the same type of postal code area.
Okay.
And there is a budget, so there is a budget cap, so that is also a difference that was not there the previous time. Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification. And I've also someone commenting still again on indeed the battery topic in Belgium. We're seeing some developments. And also congestion might help. Congestion at the networks might help, support or subsidies for batteries as well. Although it's of course not a good development, it might benefit this case, be it on the residential level, but of course also we can see a lot of potential for storage on the grid operator level. So let's see how that develops over the coming years, but not on the near horizon. No,
sorry. I would like that to go. So after these specific support schemes, I want to tell you a little bit more, elaborate a little bit more on all types of changes in policies and strategies in the Netherlands. We decided like some years ago in the climate agreement that we should develop so-called regional energy strategies. So there are like 30 regions in the Netherlands, which are mostly combined municipalities, and they develop on that regional scale a strategy enabling to accommodate, so to say, like in total 35 terawatt-hour solar and wind onshore in 2030. So this is an overall goal, and every strategy does an offer. So like they say, I will make like 1 or 2 or 1.2 terawatt-hour in total in projects. I will accommodate that. And this type of instrument allows, of course, to get more local support and to get more local participation in planning projects, because there's not much space in the Netherlands. And so we have to have a lot of actually discussions with our with stakeholders and communities in regions. So this is a very new type of policy making in the Netherlands. And on this moment, the concepts of these so-called regional energy strategies are ready. They were ready last year, and the final strategies will be finalized before July 2021. And well, what do they say, these strategies? They say where can we develop, on what kinds of plots can we develop projects, and what are the conditions under which these projects can be developed. Very important is that the strategy has to follow grid capacity, which is actually very complicated discussion. It leads to very complicated discussions because, you know, like if the citizens say, oh, that is a good place for a windmill or for a solar park, and then the grid operator says no because there's no capacity. So it's very, very interesting now in the Netherlands how we should solve these type of discussions. But we like to talk, we the Dutch, so these types also have a very nice time. Very important to know is that if the final strategies are ready, these will definitely define conditions for the new local special policies. So the permitting will be one-to-one dependent, of course, on these type of decisions they are making right now. A very funny fact, actually, that in the meantime, the market is growing so fast that based on the proven pipeline, this 35 terawatt-hour goal is almost in reach. So that's another topic we are debating right now, that, what to do now, because these strategies are almost in place, but the goal is already reached. Well, welcome in the Netherlands. Next slide, please. Yes, important policy changes for solar are, of course, first of all, this 35 terawatt-hour goal in 2030. Well, there's definitely a threat that this will act as a cap in the SDE++. So one thing to be very to be keen on is the options you still have in the SDE++. Of course, this is the highest, one of the highest priorities of our association to get this off the table. So the next weeks we are in various a lot of discussions about this, of course, in our lobby. Yes. Click. So the electrification of the industry is key, because if the electricity demand is growing, of course, this goal must be higher too. And we need actually electrification in our country to reach the climate goals, because we do not have a lot of options in the Netherlands besides electrification of industry. So this is key, and we do not know yet what will be the pace and of this development, and of course this will definitely depend on the new coalition negotiations result. Click, please. We can expect extra incentives of roof-mounted systems, like roof enforcements or whatever that we do not know yet, or obligations to fill the roofs with solar. but we do not know yet what type of incentives that will be in place. But there is a lot of debate, of course, on access to land, and therefore, you know, a lot of parties that really want to have full roofs. Otherwise, we spill our space in the Netherlands. So we expect extra incentives in that direction. Next. Well, as far as the permitting is concerned, which is only about solar ground mounted, because roof mounted systems do not need any permitting mostly. So the permitting is a topic for solar ground mounted, and the spatial policies, there are some trends now, and they are very important to know. There are a lot of municipalities imposing restrictions on the access of land to land, and some of the municipalities already say, yeah, you have to have grid capacity, it must be in place, otherwise you cannot get a permit. Landscape design requirements, ecological benefits requirements, you can expect them more and more, but also the involvement of the local community and local stakeholders are specifically required for project developers. And a specific topic in this respect is the 50% local ownership or other type of local financial benefits we want in the Netherlands from you as solar developers. This is a very special game right now in the Netherlands. Very interesting also. After 2025, this is work in progress. There's no SDE++ anymore. So we are already talking about what type of support will there be after 2025. We are now working actually on types of solutions, like we need contract for difference and shared risks between market and government in order to allow, of course, the bankability of projects. Demand side management will be very important in the next future. Maybe obligations for all kinds of companies, industries to have solar or wind, renewable energy, and of course also the new system of green taxes is under debate. So these are the types of solutions we are discussing right now in the Netherlands.
And Amelie, with regard to your first point, why do you think that the 35 terawatt goal will act as a cap in the SDE plus? Because in the SDE because after that there will hopefully be the possibility to develop subsidy-free solar parks without SDE. So do you think we will even reach the 35 terawatt hour already by 2025 then, or do I interpret
yes.
that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we expect that it will be reached very soon, and it of course all depends on the percentage of the realization of the pipeline. But I think that in like some years we will see in the pipeline sure, and you know, the proven pipeline that the 35 terawatt hours will be definitely be in reach. So this is of course very detailed monitored by the Ministry of Economical Affairs, who is responsible for the SDE++. And this is something we are very keen on, that this will not happen, that, you know, the SDE++ will stop like next year or something, which is actually something, you know, which makes me very well, restless, so to say. Yes, I'm very concerned about this. So we are working really hard to avoid that there will be a gap for years in the market.
Because, I can imagine that this is a big priority indeed.
Yeah. Yes, the 35 terawatt hours in 2030 is actually really a goal in the climate agreement, and this is why the SD++ is based on reaching this goal. So as soon as the goal is reached, the subsidy is not necessary anymore. Yeah. Right. Next topic, the grid capacity. On this graph, you see a map of 2 grid operators in the Netherlands, showing us red, yellow, and orange and white areas. And the red areas, they are non-accessible anymore for new projects. So actually on these areas, they close the connection of new projects, and they close the granting of subsidies on the SDE++. And this is, of course, something we are very busy with and I will show you and explain you in the next slides, of course, that we have to, of course, solve this type of problems in the Netherlands. But for now, this is not very comforting. Next slide, please. Yes. So what are we working on actually in the Netherlands to overcome all these type of congestion problems and transport problems on the grid? Well, first of all, of course, we now work very hard on efficient use of the grid and measures to allow more and smarter use of the grid. First of all, we we recently agreed on allowing only maximum 70% of the solar capacity on the connection. I mean that you are allowed to have a connection, but only for 70% of your maximum solar DC capacity. So this is actually a voluntary new rule. It's not stated in a law, but we needed this agreement in order to make more space for new projects. The second thing is, of course, we did all kinds of things like cable pooling, which is now allowed in the Netherlands since last year. Also, since this year, the use of the redundancy capacity, which was more or less 40% on the grids, we can use now this capacity for solar and wind production. And this is, of course, a very, very, very effective measure. And this will mean, when this is implemented correctly, that a lot of these deep red areas in the Netherlands will change color, hopefully to white, and that a lot of new projects can be, of course, be connected to the grid, meaning, of course, that you do not have redundancy anymore. So this means more risk for the project developer in terms of maintenance moments, etc., and so on. Of course, we have a work in progress on new types of strategies in congestion management and curtailment, etc., and so on. So there will be a lot of new news next years. We are working on a real-time interface management, allowing to run this congestion management better. Of course, also the better use and employment of the dynamic inverter functions is also a work in progress, but it was not still in force that we maximize the use of these dynamic inverter functions helping the grid operator. And of course, also very important, all kinds of demand side management strategies like hydrogen production, like all kinds of industrial processes in order to allow better grid operation. Very interesting topics, but all work in progress. Yeah, there will be, although some restrictions of solar capacity, there is a required positive transport indicator if you want to apply for SDE++ application. So you have to fill in the form in the grid operator in order to get this positive transport indicator before you apply for your SDE++. If you cannot have a positive transport indicator, then you cannot apply for the SDE++, unfortunately. And also, a positive transport indication will not say that you are guaranteed you will get connected and will get transport. So it's still an interesting game. Also, grid operators can refuse connections and transport, but this is very strictly supervised by the energy regulator in the Netherlands. So you can understand, of course, that this is under a lot of debate and court lawsuits, etc., and so on. And we hope, of course, as a association, that we can help by implementing as soon as possible all these smarter types of solutions. Next slide, please, which is actually already my last slide.
Yeah, before we go there, Amelie, there's also a question. Someone is wondering what you mean with redundancy capacity. Is that the sort of spare capacity that is normally on the grid and reserved for blackouts and such?
Yes. So to make the grid redundant, we have like 40% spare capacity on the grid, and this is, of course, very important for the stability of on the net. And this type of capacity we now can use also for solar production and transport.
Yeah, this required a regulatory change, right? That has now been processed since a while.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks. Yeah.
And of course, you showed the map before with the colored areas, and I assume that is before all the suggested implementations for solutions you discussed right now. Is that also correct? So all the areas that are still red, that is as it is right now, the status. Hopefully, it will be relieved a little bit by all the new ideas for the solutions. Correct?
Yeah. So yes, this will be updated every other month or so. I don't know exactly what the frequency of the updates is, but this is updated regularly, and then sometimes we see a red going to yellow or orange or white, and sometimes we see, of course, the orange go to red, and this will be, I think, be changing for the better, I hope, but I think we always will have, of course, areas where the capacity is too low and will not enabling new projects.
Yeah, exactly. And one last question regarding all the efficient use measures you listed. To which projects do these apply? Is this only for SDE scheme projects, or is this also for projects? Well, maybe that's also SDE, but projects where there's a large share of self-consumption. It's also useful for those projects to look into these efficient use measures, I can imagine.
Yeah, that depends on the type of measure, of course, but there's a long list. Yeah, this is mainly the larger projects. Yes.
Yeah. So for instance,
this holds, yeah.
Yeah, let me see, like a dynamic inverter function can be useful. But for instance, if you have a large rooftop where you use a large share of your electricity yourself, there won't be a situation of curtailment very easily. I think this is more for large ground-mounted parks.
Yes, of course. But on the other hand, there are some automatically, of course, inverter functions you can also use for smaller systems. So yeah, it depends, of course, on what type of measures holds for what type of projects. But the most of these measures holds only for larger projects. Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, now this is a question for which you might require a crystal ball. But do you think those solutions will be sufficient? Because I have someone here in the chat who is actually speaking on behalf of a grid operator, I believe. Yeah, the question is, there is of course a question whether development of solar will be faster than grid expansion, grid digitization, or all these other implementations. Do you, to what degree do you think we will be able to mitigate these grid challenges in the coming years?
Yeah. Well, I didn't show yet my last slide, but yes, it's true, of course, that the grid development is slower than the solar development. So this is actually why we ended up in this in the first place, of course. So allow me to have the last slide, please. Then I can.
Yeah, let's go to the last one.
Yes. So besides, of course, the efficient use and restriction, there's another type of strategy, of course, which is the expanding of the capacity in the grid in the Netherlands. And this is also happening. A lot of parts in the network is enforced, are enforced, and so the grid operators really are working very hard to make it all possible. So based on, for instance, very present congestion areas, there are solutions like expanding capacity, but also in the next year, so we will see that the growth of the demand of industries will be very clear. So the capacity will also follow the growth of the demand of the industries and also of the built environment. For instance, there will be a growth in all electric solutions and living areas. Another type of strategy will be to follow the regional energy strategies, because they will define actually where will be the new capacity will be built in the future. And there will be also a total program in the Netherlands describing the total spatial plan of the main infrastructure in the Netherlands. And the investment plans of the grid operators will definitely follow all these type of developments and forecasts of demand and projects development. One threat I also see for now is that the grid operators also define the 35 terawatt-hour goal as a maximum in the grid till 2030, and if they stick to this, that will definitely become a problem in the near future as well. So we're not yet there, but yeah, I think everyone is doing the best they can, allowing the growth of solar and wind in the Netherlands. We will, however, have a new energy law in 2022. It's now written in concept, and the main change for us in this law is that the grid connection, the right to have a grid connection, that will be conditional in the future. We had a right in the Netherlands to have a grid connection in 18 weeks, and this will be changed to so-called reasonable term. And well, there will be more options to refuse a connection or to refuse transport as a grid operator. Otherwise, there will be too much problems in lawsuits, etc., and so on. But we are, of course, very sensitive to this type of changes in the Netherlands, because this 80 weeks right to get a connection, this is, of course, very valuable in our country for the market. So I'm very curious if there are still questions. This is more or less the headlines of the situation in the Netherlands. And I hope it was interesting for you. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks a lot, Amelie. Super helpful to cover all these important trends and developments in the market. And yeah, we are also already 1 hour in the webinar. So, but luckily we have answered a lot of questions on the way already. So that is perfect. Yeah, there's also still quite some thoughts from people on the collaboration between the solar sector and the grid operators. I think when the issues started, I think there was a bit of a harsh discussion. Do you feel that the conversation is now constructive and collaborative between the sector? Because it's of course easy to blame grid operators for not expanding fast enough, but at the same time, the problem is of course complex. Do you feel like there's a good conversation going on?
Yes, I think there is. It's not saying that we always understand each other, right? So there's always work in progress, and there's always a little bit of a fight. But more or less, I can say that we are working actually side by side to solve all these type of problems. And sometimes, you know, we show our teeth, you know, because you have to. But mostly we help the grid operators to understand, have a deeper understanding on how we can solve all this solar capacity and the solar peaks, because they are very like, you know, it seems like they are more or less scared. How can we manage these solar peaks? And as a sector, we already have all kinds of solutions, so we do not need to be so scared about the costs.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's in a lot of there's a lot of negotiation also on technical level to implement all kinds of types of new solutions. And you know, it's an interesting time also for everyone, also on a personal and on a professional level, because you know, this is a new challenge. So as well as for the sector, as well as for the grid operators. So yeah, a lot of people are really open to new types of solutions, not meaning that all grid operators are 100% open to new solutions. But you know, we are in a period of transition, and so I'm very positive about this, actually. Yes, about the innovative culture.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear, and I think over time the challenge will be solved more and more. And with regards to the new energy law, are you also on behalf of Holland Solar engaging in discussions to I can imagine you are, to influence these new energy law developments? Are you happy with the direction that those those changes are going?
Yes, more or less, yes. And yes, of course, we are very close on the table at the Ministry of Economical Affairs, and we talk a lot with grid operators and regulators. And yeah, but yeah, I think this will be the most sensitive thing. How will we solve this grid connection rights? What will there be stated in the law itself, and how can we assure that we still have rights? You know, you need to know as a project developer when you can get your connection and when can you get transport. That is very, very, very fundamental as a project developer, and it would be very strange to have a no from the grid operator, because we have to have extra renewables in the near future. So
yeah, well, thanks for commenting on that, and I think we have to make that the last question as well, and it's time to wrap up. So yeah, thanks a lot for joining us today, Amelie. And I want to highlight a couple of things still, because we have a couple of interesting events, of course, coming up. We have way more events in our lineup, but for now, I would like to point everyone to the Solar Future NL coming up, and also the Global Floating Solar Conference in September. And with that, this will be the end of the webinar, and I hope everyone enjoyed discussion today. And as I mentioned before, we will be distributing the slides and the recordings later on. And in the meantime, well, for the coming period, we will keep distributing lots of interesting content in our campaign. So make sure to subscribe for developments in the Dutch market, or if you are active internationally, of course, Solarplaza is running campaigns in a lot of markets. And yeah, if you visit our website, you will be able to check out our virtual pass for the Netherlands, but also more information about the conference. So I hope to see everybody later in one of our upcoming activities. And for now, I would like to thank you, Amelie, for joining us today. And thank you to the audience for tuning in.